in light of my digging into the background for Putin and the fact that folks in my comment sections were both challenging my understanding of the allegations of involvement between Trump and Putin and Russia broadly, and those who were saying, hey, you're really onto something there, I realized all that stuff from back in 2016 was it's a big muddle in my head. So I went, got my Wiki Warrior on, and I got notes. People. So I'm going to try to distinguish between what is known and what are my conclusions. So TikTok doesn't think I'm trying to misinform. All right, but I will do my best here to distinguish. So the first thing someone brought up was about the fake Steele Dossier, or report, sometimes called a report. Interestingly enough, Christopher Steele does not call it a dossier. He actually calls it raw intelligence, because a dossier has redactions, it removes information that could identify confidential human sources that are used for these kinds of reports, etc. And that's not what happened with the Steele Dossier. So there were actually two reports that were created, not by Christopher Steele, but by Fusion GPS, which was the entity originally hired to do this work. Now, the first report was actually funded and requested by Never Trump Republicans. This report focused on Trump's dealings in terms of business and entertainment activities, and it used publicly available resources from the Village Voice reporter Wayne Barrett, who'd been investigating Trump. That ended in 2016 because that's when Trump became the 2016 nominee. And its highlights were his tax and bankruptcy problems, right? He had 6 bankruptcies. He had all this allegation around funny business with taxes, which came out in the New York trials in much more detail. And it restated his potential ties to gangsters and the mafia, probably in the New York scene, which isn't unusual considering he was in construction, and the unusually high number of connections to shady Russians that were already apparent in just that first report. But then the second Oppo report, it really was a continuation of the first, because that was dropped. The second was indirectly funded by the DNC and the Hillary Rodham Clinton campaign, but this was done in this very strange way. So Fusion GPS came to Mark Elias, who was and is this fantastic super lawyer for democracy, and had been in sort of the employ of the DNC and obliquely the Hillary Rodham Clinton campaign, because his law firm had sometimes been employed by them. But at any rate, the Fusion GPS team came to Mark Elias and said, would you like us to continue this investigation that we started into Trump and his business dealings and the potential Russian connection? And Mark Elias and his organization, Perkins Cole, I believe it was called, his law firm, hired Fusion GPS. Now, Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele independently to truly investigate the Russian connections because of the fact that he was a former MI6. He also was someone who had a background and some expertise to offer in what Russia was up to, basically. So now that happened in April of 2016. Okay, now, Steele started doing the investigation work and was broadly known across all the intelligence circles to be a very reliable person. He wasn't somebody who makes stuff up off the fly. Okay, moving on. He produced 17 reports. He did not call them a dossier, remember, 17 reports. And what he discovered made him so concerned that he said, I have to go to the next level with this. So it went from being broadly opposition research to something he felt was a national security threat, which is why he took the information to both US and UK intelligence agencies. The UK ignored his information. Both the Theresa May administration and the Boris Johnson administration were later accused by Christopher Steele of covering up all of the pertinent details and suppressing the release of any information from his reports. He goes from being an opposition researcher to a whistleblower, and here's how it happened. So in July, he talks to FBI agents to express what he had found out in the report, and they are so concerned based on that they say, we've got to let HQ know. Well, then the report gets sent to the New York field office for the FBI that's in NYC. It sits there for 2 months. It goes to the organized crime unit, and nobody does a thing about it. Somebody goes, no, I think they meant Washington and the counterintelligence. So the report then subsequently gets sent to Washington, D.C.'s FBI headquarters. This is also in the process of 2 other investigations starting independently, one at the CIA level and another at the FBI level. Neither of these entities know about the Steele dossier, okay? They just started their investigations because they got sus too. They got suspicious. Now, what ends up happening is, after 2 months of sitting there in that FBI office in New York, eventually the report makes its way in September of 2016 to the team at the FBI in the Washington, D.C. headquarters, who's investigating Russia. Now, they view it with some suspicion because they're like, this is Oppo research. But it is a part of and incorporated into their Crossfire Hurricane investigation of the Trump campaign's potential influence operation with Russia, and how Russia could have been party and actively trying to get Trump elected. Now, that's part 1.